I'm going to try to stick to the order of my photos. But just to get started, let me just say this. First of all, I want to welcome all of you here today. My name is Shad Khani, and I'm a number of things. I'm a traditional culture practitioner, and that one of the things that I do is that I gather bird feathers in the creating Hawaiian Kahilis. I'm also a member of the Reserve Advisory Council to Papahanaumoku Akea National Marine Monument, which provides me the access to dead bird feathers. So it's an effort to actually make a bad situation better, to allow these birds to fly again in the form of a feathered kahili. What I've been asked to do today is share with you the traditional culture practice of gathering bird feathers and putting together a feather kahili. But in an effort to do that, I want to be able to, what's important in feather kahilis serve as a way of identifying the ranks of different chiefs in Hawaiian culture. And the migratory seabird feathers, the Eva, and also the Lisa and albatross, represent the highest ranking chiefs. Those are chiefs that descend from brother-sister relationship. Is the highest ranking chiefs in Hawaiian culture. So these migratory seabirds represent these particular chiefs. But what I want to be able to do is kind of help you understand how this all came to be. And the only way you can understand it if I share a little bit about the history of these Hawaiian Islands. These are examples of feathered kahilis. In ancient Hawaiian culture, they're actually made out of native birds, but today these birds are protected, so most of us use chickens, to make these feathers, okay? Simply because the native birds are protected today. But what I want to do right now is try to explain it in this manner. In terms of governance, I want to help you understand what these kahilis meant in ancient Hawaiian culture. Settling on an island is different than settling on a continent. For example, when those people left Europe and arrived on our East Coast, they arrived on large ships, and they arrived in large numbers. So they settled in communities. As a community, it was easy to govern. Those who had the ability to lead would eventually step forward. We're talking about kahilis now, okay? I don't want you to lose sight of that. On an island, when you get off that canoe, you may never go home. And we're talking about only maybe 6 or 7 people. We're not talking about communities. And largely, in most cases, it is one family. So you have one canoe, one family, they move and they live along the path of water, and they live a subsistence lifestyle. Subsequent to that, maybe months later, or maybe even years later, several more canoes show up, 2 or 3 families. They move inland, they live along the path of water, apart from each other. They live in isolation, they live apart of each other. So governing people who live apart of each other becomes a challenge if you want to govern these people. especially if on the East Coast and elsewhere on the continent they had animals that could serve as transportation. On an island, if you want to govern, you got to walk. And in order to establish a level of governance, you got to have a relationship, right? People got to know who you are if you're going to ask them to fight for you. Okay? On an island, that is a challenge. Let me see what's next on the photo. This is a photograph of a makahiki. But before I get to that, when you have people living in isolation and you're trying to establish a level of governance.
Move the microphone a little bit more away from you.
Away.
A little bit more.
You guys heard everything so far?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't need to be so close to it.
Okay, okay.
You don't need to be so close.
How's that?
Better.
Okay, right here.
Yeah, so don't worry about speaking right into it, yeah? Try that, just speak.
You guys hear me all right? Okay. Okay, what are we talking about now is trying to establish a level of governance on an island, which is different than trying to establish a level of governance on a continent. We're talking about kahilis, serving as a manner of identifying different chiefs of different ranks. There were couples associated with different chiefs. In order to establish a kind of governance on an island, when it's difficult to establish a relationship with people, they established very strict laws. For example, just one. You could not look a chief in the eye. They had a person that was known as the ilamuku, who followed chiefs around. If you were caught looking at a chief, you needed to prostrate and look away. He would strangle you. That's so severe, okay? The reason for that, I know it's hard for us to understand. The reason for that, when you live on an island in isolation, people living apart, you gotta make certain they understand that level of governance that you assert. So once they, okay, my God, okay. So a chief, in an effort to establish a relationship, he didn't want people dying, okay? So they made kahilis that served as a means of identifying the approach of a chief. So in other words, you see him at a distance with this tall kahili standard. It allows you time to prostrate so no one gets strangled, okay? In addition to that, in ancient Hawaiian culture, the person that presented a chief with feathers is known as a kiamanu. He was the only person that was allowed to look a chief in the eye, okay? So the couple's restrictions associated with a chief were set aside in the presence of a kiamanu. So everyone enjoyed that, okay? The makahiki, and I'm not going to go into the makahiki was a time of the year when all warfare was set aside. It was a big celebration. Part of the makahiki, chiefs did not want to walk up into the mountains. People lived all over. The reason for the makahiki, it was an annual celebration when the chief walked around the island, along the shoreline. It was an effort to get people from the mountains to come down to the sea. Part of that celebration was a presentation of feathers to a chief. Okay, in 2012, I had the privilege of going to Midway Island to go gather feathers. And myself and these people that you see in this photograph. I was amazed. We were allowed to go gather feathers from dead Laysan albatross who had died from plastics and other foreign material. I was amazed at the amount of birds that were died, that were scattered all over the landscape as a result of our trash. So this is a photograph of me and a few of the people that went on this trip. That's an example of a young Laysan albatross. That's a photograph of us kind of wandering around. That particular photograph, I think we were on a separate island adjacent to Midway. Just more photographs. And you can see a few dead mollies. And the manner in which we gathered bird feathers was that we had a kahuna with us, Kalama Kabigan, who is a cultural priest. And in an effort to do everything in a traditional cultural manner, on the first day that we were there, we all got together on the eastern side of the island, and that he said several traditional prayers in an effort to kind of open the way for us in the gathering and pooling of bird feathers. Initially, it was an effort they gathered, the preserve manager gathered bird feathers. We started, he froze birds for us, but we found out that was difficult. The feathers were breaking off. This is a photograph of the construction of the Kahili. The white one in the front is all mole or Laysan albatross. So we actually built two for Queen Emma Summer Palace. These bird feathers, we cannot sell them. So it has to go to a repository. It has to go either to a museum or go to a palace.
Uncle, I can move it back.
I'm still getting too close to him.
Yeah, you're still too close because you. Okay, try.
So anyway, this is a photograph of me building a kahili. And this particular one is actually being made for Queen Emma Summer Palace. Traditionally, they were created to identify an approaching chief, the presence of a chief, to allow you time to prostrate. The white Laysan albatross was meant to identify the highest ranking chief, which is a descent from a brother-sister relationship. Just more photographs. We made two for Queen Emma Summer Palace and two for Iolani Palace. So this is the day that we presented the two kahilis to Queen Emma Summer Palace. And these are some of the people that came with us to Midway. The Queen Emma Summer Palace is up in Nuuanu. And that photograph on the right, that's a photograph of us presenting the two kahilis at Iolani Palace. Mahalo.
We have time for a couple of questions. If there's a couple of questions, and I remind those of you that are walked in after that we'll have a little bit of time after. Any questions for Chad?
Chad, I think you have one more slide. Isn't there one more?
Is there one more?
Inside the throne?
Says Chad's producer.
Inside, yeah.
Oh, there.
And then
That's inside the palace.
inside the throne room?
And there's one more?
I think so.
Try.
Sorry, gang.
It won't blow up. Try.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
And one more after that.
One more after that?
There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much.